Alright, time for some more Illogic. Last time we went over our Week 7 match against Megu and his Corviknight Clobberers. Please go check out that video first if you have not done so already, as we went over the team builder and battle in which, spoiler alert, the Bouffalant dropped yet another match, this one a 3-0 loss basically just to Ogerpon Wellspring, thanks to swapping out prematurely and then missing multiple rolls, plus taking a little too long to find all its coverage moves. That brings our record to 4-3, which may still look quite good, but the playoff race has gotten tight. There are 5 of us at 4-3, taking up the 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 seeds. And the way our playoff system works, everyone who has the same record as the 8 seed makes it into the playoffs. For this season, that means if the 8 seed ends up at 5-3, only teams with a 5-3 record or better make it in. I can't leave anything up to chance, and that means we've got to come away with a W against a tough customer. This time we'll be going over our Week 8 match against Just Greggles and his 6-1 Calgary Corviknight. Timestamps are in the description. Greg was my mentee in the Beginners League a few seasons ago, and over the course of a couple of seasons he impressed enough to earn a spot in the main league. Since then, he has continued to impress, with multiple number 1 seeds after the regular season, including a huge win over me in Season 13, in what was one of my worst performances in the past several seasons. However, he has faltered in the playoffs, dropping games to seemingly middling teams in the quarterfinals. That doesn't mean we can take him easily here, of course. Look at his 6-1 record, and note that he's also on a 6-game winning streak with some fearsome mons at his disposal. I'm sure you see that Dragapult at the top of his list of mons, and I'll talk about his team in a bit, but I guess I want to take a moment to talk about our schedule this season that I have teased about a little bit. Dragapult was obviously taken first overall. That means that this season, with 18 coaches to play and nabbing the number 12 overall pick, we have played the coaches with the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 11 picks. Yeah, the first 6 picks, including all 8 opponents picking ahead of us. Those top-end picks are all mons we've had to contend with. Dragapult now, along with Great Tusk, Iron Valiant, Chi-Yu, Chien-Pao, Meowscarada, Deoxyspeed, and Sneasler. That's insane to me, and it's reflected in our schedule this season. I've been calculating strength of schedule using win-loss against everyone else in the league, and we ended up tied for the second toughest schedule in the league, only behind John's Close Combat Club, who also find themselves at 4-3, funnily enough. Brutal schedule, with one more brutal opponent here. If we make it, we have earned it. We're going up against Dragapult, as well as Barraskewda, Azelf, Dedenne, Crocodile, Brambleghast, Glamora, Florges, Volcanion, Morgrem, and the Earthworm, with Terra Captains Dragapult and Dedenne. First thing that stands out to me, aside from Dragapult, is the speeds. Another coach with a high floor of speeds, nothing particularly slow, with no particularly notable gaps, could mess with speed creeping a good bit. Others, Dragapult is obviously insane, the defensive profile of the team is crazy, and there are a few mons that can seriously mess me up. But probably not the Morgrem, who can set screens, and I mean, it can set screens, that's something. But there are some other issues we'll get into in a little bit. Earthworm also actually struggles a lot with me. I've got several strong special attackers ready to go, including Latios, Typhlosion, Rotom, and Empoleon, not to mention among the physical attackers it's supposed to wall are Cinderace and Iron Hands, which is just not a good look for it. Brambleghast is awkward. It could, I guess, come in and try to beat Latios with some Shadow Sneak shenanigans or heal up a lot with Strength Sap while kind of walling something like Iron Hands, but really, it's just bait for some of my best looking mons in the matchup, so probably not coming. Crocodile has a very real role in the matchup as a Scarfer to help deal with Cinder and Latios, but that leaves it quite predictable to deal with, and otherwise it's bait for an easy Cinder U-turn or Yanmega Bug Buzz, or things like Gligar or Appleton are obvious walls. Again, it can come as Scarf, but I'd love for it to lock into EQ, and let me take advantage of that. Finally, I think he brings one of his other fast mons between Barraskewda and Azelf, and although he's had more success with it, I think Azelf is the one left behind. It's still outsped by Cinderace, who I already said looked great with U-turn, and although the coverage is impressive, it would just take the ability to tank one hit for me to start getting in on it and take advantage of its fragility, especially with Sucker Punch so abundant on my team, and probably being unable to pack all the coverage at once. That means Barraskewda should come. That Aqua Jet is strong. It is a bit of a problem, especially combined with Close Combat for Empoleon and, let's say, Crunch for Latios. I'll have my electric types and grass types potentially, but the strong water coverage is becoming a little bit problematic. I definitely thought I'd pick this mon up at a couple points in the draft myself, actually, and I'm a little sad I couldn't, especially when I have to face it now. Glamora is a very good mon, if not slightly weird here, but the bulk is actually kind of impressive. The speed tier being the same as Rotom is not great for me, and the ability to set up Toxic Spikes is kind of brutal. Free T-Spikes on my removal options are a bit limited, or the ability to instead go Scarf or Power or Meteor Beam on an offensive set, this thing is a bit of an issue, though it of course is also flawed itself. Florges needs to come as a Latios check. Really all I can do is flip turn out, and as a special wall with Wish, I can take advantage of every time a special attacker comes in, which is very much an issue for them and influenced my team building significantly. But also having to avoid those Moonblasts, potentially with a pair of Spectacles to boost them, man is that a problem. Speaking of, Volcanian's surprising bulk on the physical side pairs well with Florges, especially with Wish support, and for being a stop to many types that otherwise look quite spammable. Cinder, Typhlosion, Bisharp, and Empoleon could all be walled pretty hard by Volcanion, plus the water moves again look pretty great, especially with the chance to burn something like the Iron Hands. Dragapult is the first round pick for a good reason. With Specs, Band, Hex, D-Dance, Screens, and others, it's got too many sets to figure out what to do with. This guy will be getting at least 1 KO, not much to do about that, and it's going to have to probably Terra Fighting for Bisharp, or maybe something like Terra Fairy to get setup chances with the ability to still hit those other types it really needs to hit, the biggest menace on the team. But the one mon I can 100% guarantee comes, the one, the only, the powerful Dedenne. Yeah, Greg has painted himself into a bit of a corner with our benchwarming clause that states we have to bring everything we drafted at least once, and Dedenne has not yet come. So in the final week of the season, it's coming. That's a few interesting rolls, actually. Nuzzle with the 100% paralysis chance, Super Fang to cut HP in half, plus pivoting moves. That's enough to potentially be real, and knowing it's coming could help significantly. On my side, Yanmega struggles so much. Without Terra, I am walled by and lose to Florges, Volcanion, Dragapult, Earthworm, and Glimmora. With Terra, I could fix maybe 1 or 2 of those, and maybe get weaker to things like Aqua Jet Barraskewda. Nothing doing for the bug here. Appleton isn't an answer this time either. Being weak to Dragapult, Florges, and Glimmora and letting them set up all over me or swap around freely isn't something I want to happen. I was so sure I was bringing Komala this week, actually, which sounds kind of interesting, but it would have really helped with the T-Spikes and other possible hazard shenanigans, but I just could not fit it in. Pult, of course, blocks spin, and strong D-Darts is very rough, plus getting outsped by, like, everything isn't too appealing. Even if I could block things like the Poison from Mortal Spin, Willow from Pult or Volcanion, and Nuzzle from Dedenne, it doesn't seem to me like enough to help. Gligar doesn't look too bad here at all, providing great support against things like Crook, Glimmora, and obviously Dedenne, while hitting hard with EQ against a team that doesn't particularly appreciate it and removing items along the way. But really, it feels a little too passive. It's really missing Roost Recovery to go alongside Taunt to help against things like Florges, instead getting worn down really easily. It had a role here potentially, but not enough so to make the cut. Finally, maybe it's a mistake again, but Empoleon is also riding the bench. I'm concerned about how little it can do to Barraskewda while tanking CC makes an easy EQ target for Crook. Volcanion doesn't really care about me aside from maybe EQ. Even Dedenne takes advantage of me, I believe. A physical Empoleon was intriguing, but I've got some other options I think you're going to like even more. I did, in fact, cook this week, and I'll show you the fruits of the most creative team to date. After the most bog-standard Rotom. Yeah, it's about the same Rotom as from against Steve, going Terra Fairy primarily for Pult this time, also hitting Terra Fighting and Crook, with T-Bolt and Volt Switch providing great damage against everything else, and the Scarf for Pult, among others, alongside Trick to stop setup or make something more predictable. Just like against Steve, I can envision some great rolls for this thing, hoping it can catch him off guard like it did Steve. Also similar to Steve, we are running back an old favorite. It's going to be the Scarf Cinderace, which outspeeds Scarf Azelf, and it's with great pleasure that I can inform you that we will not be missing Pyro Ball this time, because I'm not bringing it. Yeah, fire coverage isn't great, actually, so I had lots of flexibility. I wanted U-turn, of course, for the safe, strong positioning, and Iron Head to hit things like Florges and Glimmora. Past that, well, the Pyro Ball is still decent for, say, Earthworm or Bramblegast. High Jump Kick is strong neutral coverage that could still miss or go through Dragapult. Sucker Punch is neat, but with a Scarf would only be useful really for Aqua Jet Barraskewda or Dragon Dance Dragapult. Maybe we had a bit too much luxury with the last few slots. Court change was on my mind, of course, for the hazard game, but decided to go all out on the defensive, grabbing Gunk Shot as a surprisingly decent neutral option depending on the exact matchup while getting the Oko on Florges compared to Iron Head, and then Double Edge is my 120 base power move of choice, not being able to miss like Gunk Shot or Pyro Ball in exchange for recoil and the inability to hit Dragapult prior to Terra. If we can force that, plus maybe get Glimmora out of there, the presence of which probably forces me to click Iron Head first to make sure he doesn't get those T-Spikes so freely, then Double Edge can be quite spammable actually. I like the ability to have something else outspeeding Dragapult at base, also outspeeding Barraskewda and things like Scarf Crook or Glimmora, so there's some actual merit to this mon and item combination yet again. Next set, we're going to try yet again for the rest on Iron Hands, this time paired with some more immediacy in Chesto Berry, alongside the Ice Punch for Dragapult, EQ for Volcanion and Glimmora, and the CC for the best damage we've got, especially against Terra Fighting Dragapult. This time, pretty straightforward. It kind of is, but I think we've got some actual uses for the Chesto this time to keep a longevity against T-Spikes or a burn from Volcanion or Dragapult, so the embodiment of Freeze Dry, as Michael puts it, should get some opportunities here. Next up, we're going to start getting to the main course here, so how about a relatively standard looking Bisharp set with a Custat Berry and Endure. Now, we have priority in the form of Sucker Punch, but that won't always be beneficial. If it's obviously telegraphed, Greg should be going Terra on his Dragapult, and I guarantee it will be a type to resist Dark. If we can predict that and properly endure a hit, we can turn the tables on him with an Iron Head instead, doing upwards of half to Terra Fighting Pult and OHKOing Terra Fairy Pult. This also has utility against, say, Scarf Crook or Glimmora. I'm actually really excited to make use of this sick tech. I've been looking for a couple of seasons in a row as to how to employ the Custap. I think we may have just found it. Of note, Custap makes you go first in your priority bracket, so even if, say, Barraskewda, thanks to Aqua Jet to outspeed, Sucker Punch in the same priority bracket goes first, even more utility in the matchup. Okay, now we're starting to get very hot, especially with this physical Typhlosion set we're cooking. I figured it would be very difficult for Typhlosion to break through things like Florges or Glimmora with its normal sets, so we're embracing the physical side here. We've got a Covert Cloak to make this my number one Dedenne answer, especially as we're immune to Super Fang, and there's Flame Charge too to take advantage of it and set up our speed. After that, Poltergeist should be KOing Dragapult prior to Terra and work alongside Frisk to reveal more items and information from my opponent's team. EQ is my way through Volcanion, dealing about a third or so to max HP Volcanion, and is the main move to click, as well as blowing up Glimmora. Overheat is in the final slot as a one-time special nuke to help against a possible Earthworm, or maybe an Intimidate Crook that I need to finish off, and could be the strongest move against some Polterras, so it's worth investing in and not lowering my special attack. And now for the final piece of the chef-cooked meal, I present one of the more ridiculous sets I've ever come up with. Latios looks atrocious in the matchup, but maybe we can turn the tables a little bit and get it to work like this. Dragon Dance in the first slot serves two purposes. If he's seen Typhlosion, he may already be suspecting we're running something strange like physical Latios, and Dragon Dance enforces that notion. And secondly, at +1 we outspeed Scarf Crocodile and above. Could I have run Agility here? Sure, but to what end? The extra speed helps against +1 Dragapult. It doesn't need to set up in front of me, and if I have to switch in on it, we're too late. Dragon Dance works anyways, and again, we could have enforced the wrong idea about my set. Oh, Dragon Dance, I can easily wall a physical Latios. Well, the next turn is going to be a Calm Mind, and after two Calm Minds, the things that can wall or deal with Latios go down dramatically. At +2, Psyshock OHKO's offensive Florges, so a Fizdef Florges is a 2-hit KO there. And at +2 Spidef, we have a good shot at winning that exchange, even possibly living an Aqua Jet afterwards, while Dragon Pulse is the easy OHKO against everything else, including a shot to OHKO Crook at just +1, among others. Another Covert Cloak makes this another possible answer to Nuzzle Dedenne, as well as allowing it to be my first switch in to Steam Eruption Volcanion. Again, ideally I can D-Dance, he sees that a burn will ruin me, and stay in clicking Steam Eruption, only for it to never end up burning as my special defense continues to go up higher and higher as I get bulkier with Calm Mind, and if I can manipulate Volcanion to get me up to +1, +2, +2, +1, that might be game right then and there. That's the team. I feel a little strange about the team being this far out of left field in a match that may determine whether I make playoffs, but I liked the prep a lot. It seems fun. I'm going to go for it. Crocodile in for Glimmora is the only difference, meaning I'm probably not actually dealing with hazards, and Dragapult is indeed Terra Fighting. Even better, with 2 of the 5 4-3 teams losing before our match, we've actually clinched a playoff spot before the match begins. That's pretty reassuring, actually, but don't think we're letting up. If the other 3 of us all win, we can lock 5 people out of the playoffs and avoid a play-in round, which would be pretty great to do considering I'll be on vacation and unable to put in more than like 1 day of prep for that round. Plus, I need to avenge my ugly loss against Greg from a couple seasons ago. Scarf Cinder is about the safest lead I can imagine, and Iron Head looks quite spammable even without the Glimmora, especially with our dedicated Volcanion switch in, so I'm going to lead with the Rabbit. Good luck, have fun to Greg. And Crocodile is his lead with Intimidate, probably about the same idea as I had in leading our fastest mons. If I assume it's Scarfed, we have a couple of options. Well, first part of the play is pretty obvious and straightforward. We're clicking U-turn, even if it does expose the Scarf. I'm pretty sure it will. As expected, let's say this shouldn't be bulky either. This is probably just a Scarf, yeah. Okay, so we have a play into, say, Rotom, which could be pretty slick to get off some good damage scot-free. But would he really just click EQ? Even knowing that EQ would OHKO right here, surely he wouldn't want to just be locked into the ground move, right? Surely it would be obvious that this is Scarfed and I can just go into a ground immunity to be just fine. Surely that means I can make a play into, say, Bisharp, even if it means losing its item to knockoff in order to get off a big hit on something else. We could try that, and surely he just played it straight in, EQ'd. Well, at least it was a 1 in 16 mineral, because otherwise I'd be looking pretty stupid right about now, huh? That was spooky and probably just stupid. Feels like I gotta get better at some of my turn 1s, I think. But now that we're here, look at the position we put ourselves in. That is obviously within Custap range, meaning we don't need to worry about revealing the trick with Endure. We naturally found ourselves with the ability to go first. That means we can KO right now with Iron Head. or we can save that for later. That's what I want to do, though that does mean that this is a nice trick. We could potentially get a KO with U-turn or Volt Switch to get this in raw and then bait something in. We don't need to get cute with this quite yet, not when we can make the assumption that he's locked in with EQ. He did stay in after all. Odds are good that this is locked in, and if that's the case, we can just go into Rotom on turn 2, and then voila, immune to EQ, and then we can make the easy play to Volt Switch out. We could always swap to Latios if needed to, but I wanted to Florges first. Terra first, in case we'd want to swap into something, and there goes Crook into Florges. What is that damage? 16%? Is that full special defense Florges? Oh man. I actually don't need all that much chip now to secure the KO with Latios because of Psy Shock hitting the physical defense. I believe just +2 should OHKO instead of 2 hit KO. Or if I get it to about 75%, I think we're good at +1 as well. That makes the Latios sweep very possible earlier than otherwise expected. But for now, we're just going to go into Cinderace, who very obviously threatens with multiple physical moves that Florges wants no part of while resisting its moves back as well. As mentioned, Steel is quite spammable with only Volcanion able to swap in, but I have a dedicated switch to that, so maybe we could actually just get going with that. Iron Head away, Volcanion in, that does make sense, and oh, that is very physically bulky. That's a little gross to look at, maybe even max. I gotta get out of here into probably just to go back to Latios. As I had said, that was the point of this move, but a nice double from Greg back into Florges on the Latios switch in, very good. However, I think I can just go back into Cinder, especially after his comment in battle. It was something like, I see you went Iron Head because you don't want to miss Gunk Shot. Perhaps, Greg, perhaps that was something I was concerned about, but also consider there was really no risk in clicking the Iron Head that turn when Latios could come in. But now that I see Volcanion is an excellent switch into Iron Head, Gunk Shot is actually much safer as I tank that Moonblast. I can easily tank another, still resisting thanks to the poison typing, even if I miss. But if I don't, which I think you already know that I don't, Florges can also take 97% and just go straight down, or I guess 100% here, and go straight down. That's a 6-5 lead thanks to Cinderace, which is, woo, that is good stuff. But you already know that Crocodile is going to come back in, lower our other stat there pretty funnily enough, and I have to make another play. EQ is obvious, and he should be aware that I'm locked in. Frankly, this play doesn't make sense if he doesn't know I'm Scarfed. So what to do? I've already mentioned that Rotom's Scarf will be valuable later on, even if we resist the knockoff, and Latios, of course, should be saved, as should Bisharp. Typhlosion dies to anything here, Cinder no. Well, actually, my last option might not be so bad. Yeah, eating an EQ with Iron Hands would be pretty rough, but isn't that why we have Chesto? And if we lose the Chesto instead of to a knockoff, isn't that fine since we're only taking minimal damage? In fact, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. Happy to have gotten this play very, very correct. Very nice. For sure. The Chesto looks less important with this match. Anyways, as I was anticipating that to rest off a Willow or T-Spikes later, I think I just need its health right now and kind of hope that Willow impacting it from Dragapult doesn't hurt as much. Maybe we can maneuver around that a little better by taking out some more pieces as we already did with the Florges. As such, we will be getting another hit off with the Iron Hands this time, and in this case, it's going to be an EQ, which will go into the Volcanion pretty obviously here to do half its remaining health, but from there, we got to get out, and thankfully, it's an easy answer. We're going to go into Latios to eat a Will-O-Wisp. Kind of wish I'd had maybe a Lumberry now to maybe alleviate that a bit, but it's all been a part of the illusion. Similarly, some goading words and call and setting up, as I mentioned before, the D-Dance. I think he's convinced we're physical, even as I don't tank Steam Eruption as well as I'd hoped, but still we're pressing on Calm Mind up. Now the rest of his team is within range of my +1 moves, and we should be outspeeding everything too. Mind you, I'm kind of doubting this is game thanks to Aqua Jet on Barraskewda being likely, but still I will take the KO on Volcanion for sure as we just go up 6-4. And the revenge option is... oh snap! That's Dragapult. Oh, could be Scarfed, sure, but probably just going to be a different option. Yep, Sucker Punch. Not much I'm doing about that, as I absolutely could not afford to let that set up. And with that in mind, that means that Rotom can come out, and we've got another pretty easy play here, which is really good. I'm really glad that we have the Scarf here. With or without a Scarf, we can just click Terra Blast, and it's just going to be that much easier with that Scarf because, of course, the outspeed. We're just going to Terra Blast away. And to Dedenne, that does make a lot of sense. It's not all that useful overall, frankly. I have my answer still in the back, so I'm just going to go to Typhlosion, and I reveal the Choice Scarf. Interesting. And with Nuzzle, probably trying to get the jump on something like Cinderace or Latios, or the Scarfed Terra Fairy Rotom, actually, with a Nuzzle, so not today. Instead, we can set up with a Flame Charge, even after it crits a Nuzzle, of course. And actually, we're going to KO, and we'll go up to 5-3. We're looking pretty good here, but here's the Barraskewda, and I think it's about time we start looking at the end game now. Crocodile is pretty good for the Iron Hands and the Typhlosion, outspeeding both. Well, not the Typhlosion at the current moment, potentially, but if I keep Rotom, he can't easily lock into EQ. And Cinder outspeeds anyways and always KOs with U-turn, which looks very free and safe. That looks like my biggest advantage right now. Plus, Bisharp will KO every time with a Custap Berry, not that he knows that. Dragapult is scary for sure. If I can't OHKO it, which I can't without Terra Blast, I think, it can set up to outspeed the Cinderace, which is a big problem for its Dragon Darts. That means I want to constantly keep up pressure to allow Iron Hands to be the one to handle a +1 Dragapult, assuming that's the set. Even better if I get it to Terra so I can just click close combat. And finally, Barraskewda. If it's the answer, it's either Scarfed or Banded, because without a Band, Aqua Jet actually does not KO. Jet is not good for Cinderace. It can easily put out damage on hands, so I think we've got to be very careful around it. But if it is indeed Banded, I think I'm finding the spot for the guaranteed win. Well, crits are possible, but what are the... Actually, never mind. Knowing how this season has gone, it's possible. But it's going to start with confirming an item one way or another by staying in. Even Mystic Water, I think, fails to KO, so it's going to have to be Bandit. Yep, it's Choice Band. Typhlosion really wasn't going to be useful anymore. Outsped and KO'd by everything around it, especially if it were to go out, except maybe a neutral Dragapult. It kind of depends. Okay, so the revenge option. Sucker Punch obviously will not KO. Iron Hand needs to be healthy enough to tank a +1 Dragapult hit, and Cinder gets nuked by Aqua Jet, so my only option is, of course, going to be Rotom. This Mon is good enough to get a KO on anything and possibly win the game on its own. But frankly, before anything else, I need to KO Barraskewda. I guess it's really down to how much I trust Rotom's bulk, especially against Dragapult. Not sure on the possibility of, say, Phantom Force. I've been burnt by that already this season, but obviously Terra Blast and Sucker Punch are resisted while being immune to Dragon Dart. So if I take damage here, maybe I'm just hurting my chances there. I guess so, but I think the 3 pieces in the back should be able to clutch this out depending on Dragapult's power. So to that end, I don't think I need to risk anything here. I can easily OHKO with an electric move. But do I need to? If Crocodile switches in, what are my options? I have to sack something, probably the Bisharp, and then Cinder comes out into U-turn, either KOing or letting Rotom back in for some sick damage, or probably in the KO as well, or swapping out of probably Dragapult, going back to Rotom, and we're in actually a pretty good position. Wait a minute, was that path easier than what I took? Well, I decided to click Terra Blast because if we went Crocodile, then that'd be a game-winning move, but instead he's going to stay into Aqua Jet. It'll actually be multiple times as I eventually hope to. Yes, I do take him out 4-2, but then I can be easily revenged. This time it's going to be by Crocodile, who outspeeds with CC 3-2, and I can, of course, easily revenge this guy as well, back with Cinderace, 3-1, and as I sit in here with the Bisharp, I've already kind of outlined the plays here, so hopefully I'm not going too fast here. And actually, we can just move forward to see the Dragapult come out as well, as that is his last Mon. Actually, this is a little bit tricky, isn't it? I do hit him for half as he Dragon Dances up, which I'm assuming is happening, but I really don't know for sure. I will then outspeed Cinder, and it would put a Fate in the hands of Hands, huh? Maybe Rotom was more valuable than I'd given it credit for. Nothing to do but attack with Iron Head, I think. If he does click Sucker Punch to KO, I can at least get a good hit off with Cinder. The U-turn was awkward and forcing me out there, wasn't it? I can Double Edge if he does Terra, which easily puts it in range of Hands, and otherwise good damage with its own Iron Head. Let's just get to it. Custap. Terra's fighting, that's good. Iron Head was always the play because of that. Dragapult flinches. That'll seal the game up for us easy. Sucker Punch does KO because we can't just let him KO him. And without being set up, all you can do is Sucker Punch the Cinder as we finish it off with Double Edge and grab the W. GG to Greg. A great game with him finally, and most everything we cooked up at least did something to help to this win. Covert Cloak, Typhlosion, D-Dance Latios for getting Sucker, Scarf Rotom, and Cinder obviously, and of course the Custap Bisharp at the end. But Cinder has to be the MVP for what it did. Shout out to Rotom and Bisharp, of course, too. What a great game that I think Rotom could have been better in had I just clicked Volt Switch, but that's overall fine, especially since he stayed in. I think we may have actually made the right move anyways. That'll do it for this week. We finished the regular season 5-3 at +9, with only one game not being 2-0 or 3-0 against the second toughest schedule in the league, including playing each of the first 6 picks, plus being the only loss the Wooper suffered all season as they finished 7-1, and one of only 2 losses for Calgary here too. it drops us at the number 6 seed. Pretty successful considering the 2 early losses, even if it is in the bottom half of the playoff teams. Well, actually, about that. Another 4-3 team loss, so instead of having 8 playoff teams, the number 8 seed ended up being 4-4, which meaning we have a full 13 team mess to sort through, including a play-in game to attend to before the playoffs proper. And hey, even though we're facing a new coach in the league who limped to the finish with a 1-4 record in the last 5 weeks, they have maybe the biggest threat in the league carrying them along, the face of maybe my worst loss in my draft career. Dragonite and the number 11 seeded Chillin' Chi-Yus await in the play-in round. We'll see you there.